welcome to this week's Ops Talks hosted by Rentley. I'm really excited for this week's episode because we have a guest that was able to join us on this past week's Rentley Security Symposium. He is the founder of, I would say, a newer company in the PropTech space. He's really a gentleman. I got to meet him at the NRHC dinner a few months back. We just organically ran into each other and we said, hey, you know what we should do? We should have you on the podcast. And from my mouth to God's ear, we are fortunate enough to have Gregory Frank here. Gregory Frank, founder of EverResi. Thank you so much for being on this week's OpsTalks.
Thanks for having me, Andre.
So for the audience that's tuning in, or maybe this is their first OpsTalks, Greg, why don't you tell us a little bit about EverResi?
We're just about 7 months in, and we're building the world's largest SFR BTR community. So news, information, insight. Really, we are going to tell the stories of this industry in our own voice. We've just recently launched the industry's only career page. So a lot of focus on people. This industry, a lot of us work remote, virtually, right? So if you come into EverResi.com, it's all the news and information that is sort of siloed in a lot of LinkedIn pages. It's pieces here and there. We've consolidated all into 2 pages right now and growing. And we really want it to be a reflection of who we are as an industry.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for really filling a need. You know, we work in single family and multifamily, and I see that there's a lot of more resources in multifamily, but not so much emphasis in single family. So you're really filling a gap there that we've sorely needed in single family. So thank you for doing that. I'm just curious, like part of the story we like to tell is learn about, founders and their stories. You founded EverResi. What got you to recognize this as a gap and address it with EverResi? What was that light bulb moment for you, Greg?
So I came in on the SFR BTR side. I worked for an asset management company back in the early days, 2021, right? We were buying 400 homes a month, 200 turns, 1,500 work orders. I mean, literally, I was executive director, drinking out of a fire hose. Of course, as the industry has matured, we did some corrections and found myself part of a riff. And a vendor of mine reached out and said, hey, why don't you come on over here to the vendor side, do a little biz dev and just make some introductions. And I said, okay, as I contemplated what I wanted to do next. And the time I spent in this space, really loved it, about this industry, right? We get to put a roof over somebody's head and we get to vendors and help them live the American dream. And that's what I love about this industry. I came over to the vendor side and I said, okay, explain how the vendor side works a little bit. And I had no idea about these conferences, kind of like where you and I met. Mm-hmm. You were on the asset management side and of what we were doing these last few years, the volume. You don't have time to really pick your head up, understand the industry as a whole. So yes, as you said, I realized unlike multifamily or any other asset class from commercial real estate, student housing, senior living, this industry did not have its own media platform. And for vendors outside of the conferences in LinkedIn, we really had no other way to connect. And that's where the light bulb went off. And I've got to give a little shout out to Dave Singland from America's Home for Rent, right? Just retired, incredible. I've had the fortune to be able to spend some time with him. And he stood at the NRHC's conference that year in Houston and said, this industry only exists because of all of you in this room, and each of you needs to be the change. So that's sort of where, and I give Dave credit, that's sort of where the whole vision sort of came together.
Wow. So Dave inspired you to really start filling that need.
He gave me the call to action.
Gave you the call to action, as he does.
Yes, he does.
That's fantastic. You're a founder, you're starting this company. What was sort of the first big rock that you encountered where you're like, wow, I really need to solve for this problem to stand up EverResi? What was one of your biggest challenges starting this company?
Really ensuring to the owner-operators and the vendors, everybody in this space, that I really wanted to tell our story. To me, what I believe the truth of who we are as an industry, the solution that this product provides in our housing policy crisis that we have here, that we really want to be part of the solution and just play a small piece in that communication ecosystem.
We were kind of going back and forth on some emails to prime for this, and I did a little LinkedIn snooping too. And what I thought was really interesting, and I see the paths merging too, is you had quite a lengthy career in law enforcement.
So I've lived a few lives, Andre.
You have, Greg. So What inspired Greg? By the way, and you went to Suffolk too, so you were in Boston. You were a law enforcement officer for how long now? 15 years? Something like that?
About 15 years I spent in law enforcement in Washington, D.C.
So how did Greg go into law enforcement?
Yeah, to be clear, so really it was 9/11. I was in Washington on 9/11. I was owning and operating dry cleaners. I mean, I was in my 20s, late 20s, and I saw the smoke billowing out of the Pentagon.
Oh, wow.
And I really had a call, and I just knew at that time, if we think back to what life was like back then, just had my first child, and I just had to find a way to serve.
And so you went into law enforcement and you served for 15 years in DC.
In DC. However, this was really times back then. I mean, the Washington Metropolitan Police Department, 3,400 sworn officers compared to New York, which is over 4,000. So the program I joined was the department's Reserve Corps. So it gave me the ability to serve in the full capacity. We volunteered our time, but no compensation. But went through the police academy. But in terms of what I'm doing today and what I've always done, it gave me the opportunity to work with the leadership, be part of recruitment. It really gave me this opportunity to drop into a paramilitary organization and really figure out and work with the chief at the time and other leadership of really, and back then police departments were going through a change, really trying to reimagine. Recruitment was down. So I got to work on all these game-changing initiatives that they were trying to deploy.
That's incredible because you're really a subject matter expert who touches a lot of pieces that are really important in single family today. You know, obviously to vendors like Rentley, but obviously to a lot of large single family operators. One of the things that we always talk about is security, right? As you know. And so it's really interesting to know that you have that boots on the ground experience of, hey, I worked as a police officer. I was on the radio answering a lot of the calls that probably relate to a lot of operators today.
Well, 100% calls to service. And so back then, of course, and so your symposium last week and being in this industry, thankfully the laws have changed. So back then in the 90s or 2000s and whatnot, it was a civil matter. There wasn't much that a beat officer could do to assist an owner operator. Thankfully, I've seen the progression, and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful to be part of it today. At the symposium, we had law enforcement there present and really talking about what they are doing and really just the amount of effort it is going to take to really have a unified approach because, as we know, law enforcement is just overwhelmed, understaffed. It is not easy when new legislation comes out, especially like this, to automatically see every agency live the behaviors of the legislation.
You're really at the junction of this, I would say, problem statement, right? Because number one is you're running EverResi. I'd like to think that you're the gossip columnist of the industry, right? You hear everything to some level, right?
But if we say that, Andre, nobody's going to talk to me.
But no, I know you're that person that people want to talk to as EverResi grows. Like people are going to understand and know you as this thought leader. They're going to approach you with more and more subject material, right? And so you're going to be more and more ingrained into the thought that single family operators have. And then on top of that, you have this expertise, right? Historically, having boots on the ground, understanding, seeing like a squatter, right? And actually being the person that responds to those calls. And remember, OpsTalks, a lot of our audience too is real estate operators. A lot of them probably weren't able to attend the Security Symposium that we hosted. So thank you so much for attending that too. And for those of you that aren't aware, we have a security symposium we host every year. We talk about trends in the industry and how we're addressing security. If you could, for the audience, give us your hot takes on, what problems the industry is seeing and how they're solving for that. And kind of layer on, again, so you served for 15 years in law enforcement. You have this really unique perspective that probably a lot of people don't even understand. I'm just curious to know your thoughts and takeaways from that symposium.
Grateful to Rentley, truly, for bringing everybody together. It's a multi-pronged approach, right? It's our folks in the legal community. Louis Brisbois, Christine Tenley is very active in this space. So it takes her expertise, right? It takes your technology at Rentley. It takes the owner operators. It takes, looking at some of, our top owner operators that, now have put security teams in place. And you had a lot of those representatives there. So it's really all working together. And I mean, we even talked at the symposium, like the next step is to bring in the courts, right? We all hear about, yes, law enforcement can do so much, but if our judges, for whatever reason are not following through, or it's just, it's not getting the attention in the court system, that's like the next stakeholder that we need to bring into this. So we could bring to life the behaviors of the legislation. It's a multi-pronged approach.
And actually, to that last point too, I don't know if you're familiar, but I believe Florida just passed recently, very recently, in the past couple, I believe, maybe even days, they passed a law that exonerated a lot of owner operators from issues that third party might see at a site if they have certain access control, video camera, and surveillance pieces in place too. I don't know if you caught wind of that, but that was an exciting development too, which I think ties into that multi-pronged approach you're talking about.
Christine hasn't briefed me on that, but I'll have to check with her. Again, so these are all tools. And again, coming out of my experience, pushing a cruiser, as they call it, answering calls for service, knowing that you didn't have the legislation, you didn't have the courts, you didn't have a process, there wasn't much to do. So now at least we're empowering law enforcement. So when you get that call, you're like, okay, there's something I can do. Just going out there, knocking. These officers are pressed for time. And now we've given them some tools to execute on. And I think that's the big game changer. So like, if you're sharing, what we're doing in Florida, and of course, from a smart home technology, providing the owner operators with the insight to what's happening at their assets. I mean, I think that's what law enforcement, wants to know, that, the owner operator is making the investment. They have technology. They have boots on the ground. They're doing vacancy checks. Like, we're doing everything to minimize the situation. But when an individual does make entry, now we can bring in law enforcement, but it's really minimizing, hopefully it's minimizing the risk.
Outside of that, like what other, again, being that you're at EverResi now and you founded a company that essentially, is kind of the pulse in the industry, what other trends are you seeing in SFR and BTR that are really exciting for you to report on?
The resident journey. Like as you can see, right, I'm obsessed with, I believe in organizations that focus on their people. And I believe, coming out of where I've been, if you focus on your people will focus on your customer or resident experience, and your resident experience, customer experience will drive your business metrics. So really looking at some of our high performing owner operators and vendors in this space that are really trying to bring to life just world-class cultures. And I think, that's really what we want to capture at EverResi. We've got high performing, owner operators, incredible service partners, and that this industry really, for some of the bigger real estate, audience, we're not even in the first inning, right? We're at batting practice. That's really how early this industry is. I mean, this is where the apartment industry was in the 1970s as corporate ownership came in. So we're just getting started, but we're leveraging innovation and technology. I mean, think about in the 1970s where we are today. Look at your product. Look at all these resources, all this technology we have. So I really think, and you listen to the thought leaders, where the SFR BTR space is going to be and how fast we're going to pulse because of leveraging innovation technology. And we just have to, right? Especially with scattered assets, to minimize windshield time and bringing together all these different vendors that we at EverResi are now bringing together. We're launching a program called the Mastermind Group, which is bringing together on a monthly virtual basis owner operators, but not necessarily the leadership that attends conferences, really the boots on the ground, the unsung heroes in the organization, those that own a pivotal relationship with service partners, and bringing them together with their counterparts on the service partner side to come together monthly virtually, so the owner operators can talk about what are their pain points and the service partners can talk about solutions. But the best part is these folks get to build a relationship and really talk about how do we get everybody rowing in the same direction. And as you know, in an organization, just like Rentley, right? When you get everybody rowing and the relationships are there, that's where the magic comes from. And I think that's what we have the opportunity to help contribute to at EverResi across the industry.
It's all about the people. You've said that a couple times, which I think is
100%.
fantastic. What do you think led you to develop that mantra?
So I spent 10 years with an organization called 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Really? You were there?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
based with Brian Scudamore, founder and CEO.
Mm.
So really there we learned, it's all about the voice of the customer, leveraging NPS. We had, clarity on, what made our clients, what our clients loved, and then opportunities for improvement. It was really exciting to be part of that. And of course, that's in the private sector, as we just shared, right? I spent 15 years in a paramilitary space. And really, just how do you inspire people? Again, law enforcement, it's just the nature who, there's opportunities, for discipline. But in the private sector, right, you can't, you don't want to discipline anybody. You want to inspire the greatness. And
Right.
for individuals that for whatever reason are not, don't believe the culture of where they are is for them, then they can move on to other opportunities, right? So how do you put the KPIs and really the systems in place to wow people, to your internal customer first, right? And of course, the biggest thing is how do you go from common sense to common practice?
100%. I think I could spend all day talking about Net Promoter Score. It's one of the things that we really emphasize, and
100%.
I think we even have a couple monitors around that show our NPS score, because being customer centric is so important, especially as things change and you're servicing renters and owners, right? They all have different needs, wants, desires. So measuring that is super critical.
Yeah, so we all want to know that we matter. And I think that's
Yeah.
what NPS empowers.
Yep. I think that's a common thread when I interview people is, making meaning, right? It's we all want to make sure we're making meaning. And I'll tell you, my internal NPS is a reflection of Rentley's NPS too. When I look at the board and I see like detractors, I'm like, oh man, we could be doing things better. But when I see tens, I'm like, yeah, we're doing it right. So it definitely gives meaning. So half of this is half ops, half human, right? I want to get to know a little bit more of the human side too. So you went to school at Emerson, you went to school in Boston, as they like to say. Did you ever pick up the accent or no?
Well, I was in for broadcast journalism, which of course is amazing that here I am, a few decades later, finally, quote unquote, using my degree here in a media
Right.
platform.
Your undergrad, that's right.
Yeah, so my undergrad, in broadcast journalism. But no, we had to take a voice and articulation class. And I think my professor's name was like Babs. But being based in Boston, you'd have, folks from New England, Rhode Island. And I just, thankfully I grew up in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale. Did not have that New England accent. But I remember some of my, fellow students in tears because they just couldn't enunciate, or lose the cat.
Yeah, right. I also went to school in Boston, and no, it's a great town, and I frequently miss it. It's changed a lot since probably me and you were there, but it's one of my favorite cities to go visit.
It's a great city.
My hangout personally was Great Scott, Packard's Corner, which is over in Alston. That's on the other side of Boston. You were like down. You were near Park
I was
Street.
in the Back Bay. I mean, I even
Yeah.
worked at Cheers. I worked at Cheers
No, you
while
didn't.
I was in.
Did you
I was
really?
I was a greeter, and then the show was still on, so they would come out and film exterior shots. But I mean, I stood outside.
No, you
And
weren't.
had to explain to folks why, as they came out, the inside looked nothing like the Hollywood set.
Right, like the set, and they had the little norm seat. They had the little norm corner where you could sit?
So the inside was the original,
Right.
called the Bull and Finch Pub. So it looks nothing like the Hollywood production. But upstairs there was a restaurant, a high-end restaurant called the Library. Anyway, they had the lobster bisque soup. I was a 19-year-old college student with without the funds, and I would stand outside and sip my lobster bisque soup, and I thought I was just thriving.
So you managed to finally use that broadcast journalism degree. Now you're back in PR and marketing. You've come full circle, which is fantastic. Outside of your work, obviously, that drives you. Like, what are your hobbies that really help you personally thrive, or what gives you meaning outside of work, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm fortunate. I have two young adult children. One graduated from Penn State, works for the university. The other one's at Virginia Tech. So very fortunate to have two amazing kids. Recently moved to Atlanta after 30 years in DC.
You got out.
Yeah, I got out and I miss it. I miss it.
You do?
That's the only thing, I wish at one point this industry would have a conference in DC. I would love to do that. Or we just need to get to DC because there's, of
Yeah.
course, a lot of pressing matters that
Mm-hmm.
the folks in DC certainly need to hear from us, and we need to work with them. So lots of opportunities. But yeah, so overall, just getting to know Atlanta, enjoying Atlanta. Grew up in South Florida, so I'm not too far from home. I enjoy getting outside, traveling, and spending time with my other half.
So tell me, favorite place to travel, worst place to travel. Hot take.
Favorite place so to me, favorite place is anywhere in the Caribbean. Worst place to travel, oh my God, probably Atlanta. No, I'm kidding.
Don't say it. You're there now. Worst trip, worst experience traveling you've ever had.
So I did some, if you looked on my background, I did some campaign traveling for a former presidential candidate.
You did?
So yeah, I
So
spent
you're
some
hitting
time
the
on the
campaign
road.
trail.
I did. So, I mean, we would do 9 cities and 3 states in a day.
Wow.
So I literally had to write on my nightstand what city I was in. So when I woke up, I knew where I was.
That's a grind. 9
True
cities
story.
in 3 days.
I mean, that's towards the end, but
Ooh.
yeah, you got to pick it up towards the end of the campaign.
That sounds tough. I guess it taught you the value of not traveling so much.
It's not easy,
It's not easy, no.
because you're in the bubble and then that ends. And if you have to fly commercial onto the next, they book you last minute. You got to go through 3 levels of security. And,
Right.
10 minutes ago, you're with the individual that's hopefully going to be the next leader of the free world. And then, 30 minutes later, you're going through several layers of airport security. And you're like, you got to be
Right.
kidding me.
I guess, Greg, we touched on all the points. I mean, I give everyone an opportunity to spend, a minute just pitching or 30 seconds to a minute pitching, anything about them or something they want to market or advertise. Now's your time.
Well, certainly we want to invite everybody into EverResi.com. As I said, we're building out the world's largest SFR BTR community. I love this industry. Love the connections. I mean, you're part of this world as well. I mean, I think we all come in and we all contribute a little something, from the owner operator side, the service partner side. And I think we all know we're building out something really incredible. And it's more of that than that. It's, the builders, it's the owner operators, it's the products in the SFR, and of course now the BTR community, the product that we're offering to, folks that are choosing to lease. For whatever reason, really top-notch, amenities and quality. So able that we can provide that platform. Super excited about our mastermind groups for those that really are trying to come into this industry. A lot of folks coming out of multifamily and they're coming into the primarily SFR, but BTR space. And they're saying, okay, how do we figure out, how do we navigate this? Who do we need to connect with from the builders to everybody in this ecosystem, from operators, third-party management, all of that smart home technology with Rently. So we're bringing everybody together virtually to build relationships, talk about the solutions, and really how do we, go forward, but really what do we as an industry want to look like in the next 3 years as we mature, as we develop, as we become a permanent asset class? What does that look like? And we're just thrilled to be part of the conversation.
Really appreciate it, Greg. I mean, we've been working in single family since 2011, and you're right. You're really filling a need. There's obviously been a community in single family and build to rent, but there really hasn't been that forum outside of conferences to really connect offsite. So really think you're doing great work with EverResi. We appreciate you being part of the Security Symposium and obviously being a part of OpsTalks and just being a good friendly face in the industry that people can turn to. Again, I just met you I think a couple months ago, and it was instant like, oh yeah, we got to have you on. You're just a genuinely good guy. So appreciate you being on OpsTalks and really telling us your story.
Well, that's very kind. I appreciate that. Certainly appreciate making connections with your team at Rently. Fantastic team at Rently. Great symposium. I'm hoping to get an invite to your summit in September. September. So
happy to have you.
I don't know who I have to talk to, but I hope this helps.
I'll put in a good word. Thanks again, Greg. Appreciate your time. Ladies and gentlemen, that was this month's Ops Talks. Really appreciate y'all turning in. Please like and subscribe to the video. And Greg, we'll see you again.
I hope so. Thanks so much, Andre.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Signing
Thank you.
off. Peace. Don't forget to click the link at the bottom. Click the link.